This episode of Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppet is brought to you by Audible. For a free 30-day trial and to receive a free audio book, just head on over to audible.com/Gamebreaker. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 25 of the Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppet. Yes, it is the WildStar show for November 12th. Is it the 12th? Yeah, it is the 12th. Yeah.
It is the 12th.
It is. We're a little late. We're doing this on an off day, so I wasn't sure. But you are watching Gamebreaker. I'm Gary Gannon. Coming up on today's show, Warriors are the new hotness. Tons of info, live streams, and class videos, plus hoverboards. Hoverboards. All them are, but first, Mr. Farhan Siddiqui, how are you, sir?
Hello. Ready and waiting for us to get going. Got a new mic? Sounding better, I hope?
Sounding fantastic, sir.
I know, right? Yeah, now you guys, if you want to whine, you can complain about my real voice instead of just underwater me or whatever.
Underwater. You and
It's
Mark.
got the new hotness.
Sharon Mikes. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, doing well.
All right, let's jump into it. Let's talk about the Warrior class. The Carbine re-announced. You missed it. The class last week. Ton of info. First up is a video that I can't play because of YouTube. And but it's definitely worth a watch. Go watch it. Power swords, arm cannons, brute force. What do you think of the new Warrior, Mr. Mark Taylor?
I think it's awesome considering I normally play like a tank kind of class. So I thought it was awesome that they actually explained some of the stuff in more detail. You could kind of figure out that, you know, they got a sword. They can't make it quite like a lightsaber for, you know, obvious reasons, you know, getting sued, and also the whole fact that they built some kind of like little lore history behind it was pretty awesome. I thought also something that they did that I didn't expect, and, you know, I'm really not trying to make some kind of tie to like Jedi or some kind of order like that, but they kind of made it like a fraternity, you know, the way they were talking about the backdrop, you know, these folks go back such and such, and so I thought that it gave it like enough little cred that I'm like, okay, that's cool, as opposed to just some jackass who's trying to wield a sword in a sci-fi game, in which case you're gonna get your butt shot off, right? So there were just so many different things that were kind of cool about it that I guess I'll kind of hold off as we start going around the conversation.
What'd you think of the class, Farhan? You like it?
Yeah, the dev speak was great. I mean, it was a little bit vague on the details, which is understandable because everything's in flux, and a dev speak probably isn't the kind of thing that you want to have to like edit and have annotations like, nope, we changed this mechanic, oh, we changed that or something. So, but yeah, you really got the feel for what they're going for, and you can really understand that, you know, the warrior is that, you know, normal archetype that you see in almost every MMO. You got this guy with a big sword going in there, and yeah, I agree with Mark that it was nice that they actually, you know, made an effort to cement like lore-wise why you see these guys fighting out there.
Tell me about the lore. I mean, it's kind of hilarious. Like, why we're using a giant sword in a sci-fi game. I mean, it's literally nuclear powered, right?
Yeah.
Yep. the one thing when they added that whole like atomic powered, nuclear powered sword kind of thing is I started thinking about, was it Dargo from Farscape? Remember that sci-fi show? Because everyone, you know, was sitting there shooting guns, and he'd carry the, you know, this big ass sword. Now, granted, it could open up and serve as like a gun, but the point was, it was still just kind of different, yet it still worked. And so that's kind of the reason why, you know, back to the whole, you know, comedic way of approaching the game, it still kind of makes sense because, you know, even today, you know, as high tech as we are in 2013, I guarantee if some like samurai ninja, some guy who's skilled with a sword, you know, hits you with closing distance, you're done. It's toast. You know what I mean?
And they've still got like all that tech powering their defenses, and, you know, with the arm cannon and everything else. So they still got tech in there. It's just that, you know, they're still brute force. They're going in with the sword, and it really gives you a feel for how the class will actually play because, you know, it is that in-your-face action, which I'm looking forward to talking about how excited I am about their resource and everything.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about, like, I wonder if there was any concern about, like, some people were talking about how the warrior, it's not being like a traditional pull, right? Because the arm cannon has a grapple, right?
Yeah, they've got a plasma whip, like literally, like so. I mean, I was telling my friend about this, and I sent him like the dev speak, and he's not really that like keyed into WildStar yet. I'm gonna get him there, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know, right? It's just it's that slow burn that they're gonna just get everyone. But anyway, so I described it to him, and he's like, this is basically Mega Man, right? It's like Mega Man and Zero, like from the games combined. You have a huge sword, and then you also got like the power cannon thing, so you're like shooting out different kinds of things out of his arm. So yeah, so he's got a pulling ability. He's got all kinds of stuff that he can change his arm cannon into. So that's pretty awesome.
And that was something new that I hadn't seen before. I had seen that like buzzsaw capability that they had at E3 and all the other little videos that they had shown. And that was one of my concerns, because I played in, Tour, I played a Sith Warrior, and the one disadvantage I always felt in PvP or even raiding was the fact that I didn't have any kind of, you have the really cool gap closer, which they have here, in terms of that leap, but other than like your saber throw that you had, and you didn't have any other way to either defend yourself against melee or to just pull something. So the fact that they added the arm cannon, which in my mind I was like hoping that they would have that in the dev speak when they finally showed the guy shooting something, I was like, oh wow, that's cool. That's exactly what I was needing in my mind. That's exactly what I was hoping that they would create. So I'm just so happy that they actually showed it. I guess the only thing I'm either concerned or hoping about is that that's something that you can use more than a situational ability, in which case I'm hoping that that's actually either A, an attack that you can use as just another one of the things in your arsenal, or B, you can just use it as something, with less damage as a pulling mechanism, as opposed to always having to leap into where you're going, right?
Yeah, so we didn't get to, we're going to get to like the live stream and everything, but just to hit on that topic specifically, they showed that there were several abilities that use the arm cannon to, shoot from range. And so, and in the, recently the WildStar class team, they went on Reddit to do like an Ask Me Anything kind of thing, and somebody asked, like, can you sort of build like a range set out of it? And they said that probably not, you wouldn't be able to do like a full range set, but you could maybe make like a tank build that had a decent number of ranged attacks, so that you could actually do a decent amount of work from range. Maybe that would be useful in like a boss fight where like you actually can't really get into melee range that often as a tank or something, or you need to just keep pulling stuff in. Like Mark was saying, that would be pretty handy to be able to actually just use that arm cannon pretty liberally. So
now, also with the arm cannon, something that I think is much needed in MMOs. There's just definitely not enough water flowering simulators out there. So I'm not even joking. You could actually use your arm cannon to water flowers. This has got to really. What I really hope this has an actual purpose in the game.
Maybe it's like a settler thing. Warrior settlers can water flowers.
I don't know. It's gonna be the new tea bag, like in your face.
It's like situational.
It is situational, sure, for sure.
A little bit.
And Carbine have said before that each class would have one weapon in the past. Do you think they're moving away from that now? Could I build like a fully ranged warrior, do you think?
So So one of the questions that they asked in the Reddit Ask Me Anything thread was is the arm cannon a item slot that you're actually changing like gear wise? And they said that no, it's just like a thing that they use, that the warriors will always have on their arms, like cosmetically you'll always see it there, and but it's not actually itemized kind of thing. So some abilities will use it whenever you have an ability that uses it. So the plasma saw, the plasma whip, the whatever other arm cannon shots that they end up with, those are going to just, when you push the button, he's going to use his arm cannon. Otherwise, the other abilities are going to use your sword. So it's more like an animation thing rather than it actually being like an itemized, like, I'm going to go ranged warrior or whatever, and just like, instead of equipping a sword, you equip like an arm cannon or something. So
thank God, because if everyone else is going to be having like one weapon, it's just makes it so much simpler to focus on one thing, as opposed to trying to focus on two things. I mean, duh. You know what I mean? It just gives you something else to also screw up, because like, we'll probably get into it. It's just, like amps or any kind of resources, you might end up screwing yourself because you start feeding that out as opposed to feeding out your big sword. So it just makes it simpler, and it makes it some of those things that you can click the button and it works relative to the attack and relative to the roll in the background, and you don't have to think about it. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's just nice, right?
It would be cool though if they did do something so that you could customize the way it looks. Because if it's just like a static model that you see like the whole gameplay, you just got this thing on your arm the whole time. It would be nice to be able to like customize the aesthetics of it in some way. And we don't know anything about that like right now, so you know, we'll see if that's actually something that you're going to be able to do with the warrior. Otherwise, you've got an arm thing and you're stuck with it if you don't like it.
Talk to me a little bit about, like you mentioned it really briefly, but the resource type. So kinetic energy, similar to Rage and WoW.
It sounds similar. Like if you just read the surface level, like okay, you use abilities that build up your resource, and then it drains. Like the other thing that's in the like the one sentence summary on the webpage is that it drains like slowly. And so it might seem like okay, in World of Warcraft, Rage was okay, you know, use abilities to build it and then you used abilities to spend it, and then it went down when you were out of combat. Instead in this, it's actually a little bit different. So you have abilities that build your kinetic energy, and then abilities that don't actually consume it, but you have to have a minimum amount of kinetic energy. So like for Whirlwind, for example, they showed in the live stream, you have to have at least 200 kinetic energy to actually start the ability. But that's it. Like it doesn't actually consume it, and continuously while you're fighting, it's going to be getting drained. So if you're wasting time not doing anything, then you're actually like just losing your resources. You're going to have to rebuild your kinetic energy and get going. So it actually is actually very different from a gameplay standpoint. It actually really encourages, you know, a momentum kind of feel, like you're constantly pushing buttons and getting in there. And then once you have enough kinetic energy, you can just really unload, because as long as until it decays to the point where you can't use those abilities anymore, you can just keep hammering on them. You know, unless it has a cooldown. But most of them, you're going to have some sort of spender that doesn't have a cooldown, and you're just going to go at it. So,
can you also talk about how they changed the way it was? Because I know that they had fixed, well, not fixed, they just altered the way that that resource is consumed. Instead of having like the 3 little bubbles, you know, have one like chart or whatever.
Right. So before it was kinetic cells, you had like the 3 little orbs, and if you look at the website, they actually still have the graphic of it if you want to see what it used to look like. They have it, like, you know, I tweeted at them and they were like, you know, all this stuff is not subject to change, so, you know, we'll update it at release. But it was like, okay. So they have the kinetic cells image there. You can still see the green orbs, or sorry, red orbs that you would fill up. And it used to be really actually much more similar to Rage for Warriors. You built it up and then you consumed it with abilities. And like it would, I think, decay out of combat or something, but it wouldn't actually, it wasn't like this where it was just like you're building it up and then you've got this minimum thing. And they can do a lot of really interesting mechanics. Like one of the things that they showed off was that maybe I build up a lot of kinetic energy, and then one of my spenders, has like a minimum, like, okay, so you have to have at least 200 kinetic energy out of 1,000 to use this ability. But every time you use it, it'll lower its global cooldown by half a second or quarter second or whatever it was. So you push it once, and then okay, you get like a satisfying little bump, but then you just get into this momentum of like pushing and pushing and pushing, and you get more and more damage more quickly. And you try to do that because, you know, you want to keep using it as much as you can until your kinetic energy actually drops below that threshold. Then you sort of start over again, or you might use your, you know, innate and suddenly go into overdrive and keep using it or something. So it actually comes up with this sort of gameplay that actually feels really like, it seems like it would be very satisfying, like a very visceral kind of I'm hitting this button and I'm doing a ton of damage, rather than it being like sort of a more methodical, tactical, like I'm building up resource, I'm spending resource kind of thing.
Yeah, and the main reason why they did that was so that it didn't feel like as you're attacking whatever or defending whatever, that you expend all of your resources, which are allowing you to use your special attacks, and then have to go through, like, I guess, spamming your 1 key or your default attack to try to build that resource back up. Because the experience you were having, according to the beta testers, was that I'm epic, I'm building up. I'm epic, I'm building up. You know, so it was kind of like this disjointed combat feel. Whereas now, the way that they've set it up is you now have a more fluid feeling of epicness, and it also, I guess, enhances the continuity of the battle, right?
It's like if you wanted to describe warrior combat in one word, it'd be momentum. You're building up a lot of kinetic energy, a lot of momentum. You got that nuclear powered engine or whatever that's inside of your sword spinning faster and faster, and then you just sort of unload on the enemy, and you get a ton of damage in while it's still spinning.
So Mark, you play a main tank usually. How do you think this is shaping up as far as, like, that's probably the class you're going to play for sure? How does it sound to you, that's a style of gameplay?
So at first I didn't really, because I've only, seen it at like E3 and a couple times. So, you don't really get a true feel for what the class is like. But when they explained, that part I just said about, changing the fact that now you can keep your momentum, now you can keep going on with your attacks as opposed to I just drained 60% of my resources and I got to kind of hold off until I can build back up and then I can do something special again. Now it kind of seems more like a fluid type of combat, which is more of the experience that I would say that DPSers kind of feel, because normally DPSers don't have some governor on their DPS, right? Whereas if as a tank, most games give you some kind of governance mechanism where it's like, oh, you can't be too epic. You can take a whole lot of damage, but you can't kick somebody's ass, or it'll take you a while, right? So you, Mr. Tank, have to outlast them by just having more defense or more mitigation or more hit points. Now it feels relatively like I can get in there, I can crack a few heads, and I might be able to outlast relative to my build. So am I more DPS? Am I a balance? Am I a full-on tank? I still think that now the full-on tank build will at least give you the experience of just having a more continuous fight, which means I either have more damage mitigation, I have more hit points, but I can still be doling out my damage at a relatively even rate as opposed to I'm epic, I gotta hold off. I'm epic, I gotta hold off. That's just kind of the feel that you get in most MMOs. Now, even though I might only be hitting with like a 40% attack, at least just the fact that I'm consistent with that attack, that at least in my mind makes me feel more fluid. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's kind of what it feels like to me.
Well, it sounds like you're kind of excited about it.
One thing that I was a little concerned about when I was first seeing like the first part of the video or the live stream where they were showing the kinetic energy off it for DPS, I was a little bit concerned about, okay, like how is this going to work for a tank, right? If you're constantly having a stream of enemies coming in and you have to like pull them in, like if your bar's decaying, even if you're not fighting, then is that going to be annoying that, okay, if they're not in my range or I'm still like managing like positioning or something else and I'm not able to like get my resource and then all of a sudden, no, okay, my resource is gone, I have to rebuild from start or something. But one thing that they showed in the video, and I just realized it makes sense lore-wise as well, or whatever you want to say mechanically, that they when they showed the tanking warrior off in the stream, it had a decent number of the arm cannon attacks, right? Like they had like a little polarity field that it puts like a debuff on one of the enemies, like a telegraph on one of the enemies that just keeps hitting everyone that's around whatever enemy you put the debuff on, and then like a plasma wall ability that would just do like an AoE attack around him. But those things aren't in your nuclear powered sword, right? So they didn't use the kinetic energy resource at all, so it makes sense from lore, and then it also makes sense from okay, if I'm a tank, then it makes sense that I would want to have maybe a few more of those arm cannon attacks so that I don't feel as dependent on having to make the most of my resource whenever I have built it up. Because if you need to get out of a telegraph, and presumably a tank is going to have like more important telegraphs that they have to be dodging out of. That's going to be a lot of the tank gameplay. Do I stand in the telegraph? Do I not stand in it? And so what they sort of have to decide is you don't want to feel hamstrung by being a warrior that, okay, no, I had to get out of the telegraph, but now my resource is gone, kind of thing. So, just put on some more arm cannon abilities and then you're sort of safe from that. And maybe that'll be relevant in PvP too. Maybe, you put on some more arm cannons, things, you don't feel as constrained by kinetic energy.
I know you like experimenting with a lot of different stuff, Farhan, but is this turning into something like that you might want to play and see yourself playing the type of class?
I actually don't really go with the warrior archetype that often in these games, just because I like something with a little bit more complexity to it. This warrior actually does sound pretty cool, so I'm probably going to give it a shot. But I think if I was going to play a melee character, I'm leaning a little bit more towards the stalker, and I'm looking forward to seeing like what they're going to show off with that, just because it seems a lot more like the whole dodge tank thing is something that I haven't gotten to play in quite a long time in an MMO. So I'm looking forward to that.
Whatever some of the people out there maybe weren't following all the details on the old class changes, to the new ones. What are some of like the main changes for the new from the original reveal
of the warrior? So what besides the resource changing, they've done a lot to try to. I know that they were saying in the live stream that they got some feedback that the warrior felt really slow. Like Mark was saying, you're sort of like building up, and then long periods of that I'm building up, and then just a very short amount of I'm epic. Because if you're filling up 3 bubbles, and then like one of your abilities uses 2 of the 3 bubbles, then it's like, okay, like you spent a lot of time building up those little bubbles of resource, and then you just spent it all really quickly, and you don't really feel that good about it. So that was one thing for the resource change. But they also said that they're tweaking global cooldowns. So that was something that was interesting to me. On an ability by ability basis, Carbine can tweak global cooldowns. Like, okay, I use this ability and it puts this global on everything, and I use this ability and it changes its own global cooldown every time I use it, kind of thing. And besides that, just taking other abilities off the global cooldown. So they showed that, okay, you have leap off of the global cooldown, which made like an interesting idea. Yeah, jump off a cliff, plasma whip to pull them off, and then leap back onto the cliff so that you make the person fall. Yeah.
We keep talking about the live
I
stream
hope
stuff.
that works.
I want to get into, there's a ton of live stream stuff that they've been showing off as well. Really quick, I want to tell you guys about a great deal we got going on with Shutterstock. If you guys have not checked out Shutterstock, got to go head on over to shutterstock.com and check it out. If you guys have a website, a YouTube channel, maybe a video project that you're working on, I'm telling you, you have to check out Shutterstock. We use it here at Gamebreaker on a daily basis. I was actually just searching for some stuff while you were talking about that, and I was thinking about, like, I was just looking at our main WildStar, artwork here, and I was like, maybe we'll see what they kind of got. Maybe you want to do something that's just kind of fun with some characters kind of stuff. And I found this artist here. This is one particular artist. I started finding all these really cool, like, monsters and just really goofy stuff and robots. I think we've actually used some of this artist's work before, actually, in some other stuff, because I kind of love robots. But again, all of these come in vector artworks. You open up an Adobe Illustrator and you can open them up and resize them, blow them up, make them larger. They don't break down, anything like that. And this is great if you're working on a YouTube page. You need to make a header banner or something, and you're kind of like, maybe you don't want to use your face, and maybe you want to use like something kind of fun and goofy and kind of come up with a look for it. Start looking for some vector artwork just on different themes, fantasy themes, cartoon stuff. There's just tons and tons of artists just like this one on Shutterstock, including video footage. A lot of people check out the video footage as well. Some really good stock footage there. Want to save you guys 25% off on your brand new account. You don't even have to sign up today with a credit card. You don't need a credit card. Just sign up today. Go over to shutterstock.com, make an account. And when you're ready to make a purchase, just make sure to use the promo code GameBreaker1113, and you will immediately save 25% off. Check it out today. You're gonna find all this stuff on Gamebreaker because we use it constantly. You're gonna be like, I saw that. I know where that's from. That's from EQ Nation. Oh, that's from XIV. That's the logo. Yeah, it's all over there. We use it constantly. Check it out. All right. So the live stream event, where they showed off the new Warrior. Let's look at first up this screenshot. Is this the right screen? Is this the action set builder? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, the
That's
action
the
set.
ability tier.
And
so
you can see Farhan salivating.
I know. So you can see here how the ability tier system works. You have a limited number of points, which you can put wherever you want. Each major upgrade will add something special to your ability. In this case, like 40% move speed at tier 4 and interrupt armor at tier 8. All right, so I'm going to start with you, Farhan, because obviously you're salivating. Is this what you were hoping for from the system when we first heard about it?
It is pretty much what I expected. I expected it to be something where the smaller tiers are going to be sort of like a basic upgrade to the ability, and then the bigger tier, I was actually hoping that it would be something where, at tier 4 and tier 8, there'd be some sort of choice, like you can like tweak the ability in some way, but, just having like an interesting side effect, like a major upgrade, is sort of neat. And they did give a lot of details, especially in the Reddit Ask Me Anything thread, where they talked about like how you will earn these points. So basically, what they have planned is that you would earn 1 point per level from 10 to 50, so you'd have 41 points, basically, to spread out. The smaller tiers would be 1 point each, and the bigger tiers would be 5 points, because, it's a more significant upgrade. So if you do the math on that, you would be able to max out 2 abilities to tier 8, and then something at tier 4 or something, if you wanted to, like, maximize that. But the more interesting thing that I thought out of that tidbit was that they actually do intend for you to have some sort of elder game progression where you continue to earn points in some way till you can get to the point where you can max out 4 different abilities at like super elder game, like you've played for quite a while at level 50. But at least at the start, when you get to level 50, you would only be able to max out 2 of them, and then have some spare points to just sort of sprinkle around.
Mark, what are your thoughts on the action tier system?
This was actually what I was hoping that they would have, specifically in the fact that you could feed out the thing that you like the most. Ultimately, there's going to be a smart guy like Farhan or somebody who's going to min-max, and they're going to figure out the most optimal build for, you know, this type of tank, that type of tank, whatever kind of tank you want to kind of be. But this allows you to find the abilities that you know you like, because 9 times out of 10, I'll come up with my own screwed up build as I level. I get to level 50 and I realize I was dumb. And then, you know, I'll go on to one of the different sites, because there's always one, and I'll change my build. And, you know, it'll normally be about an 80 to 90% solution, and I will always see improvements because somebody thought of a better way, especially if they look at rotations.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, that different, you know, 5 to 10% will be some ability that I just like more. And so I might not be the most epic tank, DPS, or healer, but there's just certain abilities I like more because it's just meets more of my playstyle. So by having it like this, it now gives me that ability. A classic example is some people might like an optimal rotation for DPS, but they might lack maybe a CC ability. I like to use a lot of CCs as a tank, because I notice a lot of times, other than, you know, getting kicked in the face, because you're usually looking at the kneecap of the boss, I like to be able to CC different mobs that are going after the healer, whereas other tanks just want to go and be a meat shield and get hit, and then the healer better just survive, right? So that's just kind of more my play style. So something like this, you know, not knowing all the abilities, I think allows me to do that, right?
The other thing that's really interesting about this is that the tiers can be raised and lowered completely for free as long as you're out of combat. So that's the only thing. So easy respecking for ability tiers. What do you guys think of this?
That is so awesome. That is so awesome.
It's absolutely vital, really.
Well, especially if you want to have, and of course I'm brain farting on the specific term, the ability to go in and out of different specs for PvE versus PvP, multi-spec or whatever, dual spec, right? A lot of MMOs don't really do it. Some newer ones do, but the point is you can change it at will out of combat, which is awesome because you don't go broke, because a lot of MMOs you go broke just trying to do that. And they don't have it in the system yet, but they said they're going to put it in either in beta or before launch, an ability to, you know, kind of categorize, you know, your different builds.
The loadouts.
So your loadouts. So now you can just press the loadout relative to what's going on, either in a dungeon or as you're leveling, and it just takes the thought process out. Now, the thing I hope that they add to that is maybe different gear that you're wearing that maps to the different.
They did say that hopefully that they'll be able to do that. That you would have the loadout system like account for gear and change your gear if necessary.
Oh,
like
cool.
If you had, like, tank versus DPS, and you know, that's something that Hugh Shelton said that, you know, we hope that we'll have that in. So not 100% confirmed, but, you know, you can say, hey, you promised me that, you know, kind of thing, because that's what we do on the internet.
With the modding ability, though, somebody should be able to can make that. So they're not screwed if they don't have it for launch, because somebody
will have that.
Will write it and make it a mod that you could get. I'm assuming there'll be some auction house or market or some kind of way to get access to that as player. So I'm just relieved at many different levels that I'll be able to have that. It'll make my experience that much easier. I can change the way I want to play. I can change my loadout. I don't have to leave a dungeon, go all the way back to town, or find some trainer, switch it, lose an arm and a leg and gold or whatever to do that, then come all the way back, because that's what normally happens in a lot of MMOs. So the fact that I can do it out of combat just makes life simpler.
I think more generally, it's actually completely vital that they had this in there, at least for the ability tiers, just because, you know, they said that, okay, you can change your ability loadout. You've only got, you know, 8 main abilities, and you're probably going to need to, you know, switch them out depending on what your group composition or what the needs of the fight are or whatever. You know, like, do you need your plasma whip as a warrior? Well, if you're just, you know, sort of face tanking a really hard boss and you don't really have ads that you need to pull in or whatever, you know, that's probably not the most useful skill in that point, right? So you would want to be able to change them out, but you don't want to feel like, oh, but I've had my plasma whip at tier 8, and now I just have, what is that, 17 points wasted, gone, because I'm not going to use that ability, and so I'm going to change it on my bar, but I can't change the ability tiering. So it is like important because you don't want to feel like, okay, I'm stuck putting those in basic skills that I'm never going to take off my bar. Otherwise, I'm losing my ability tier points whenever I want to change my abilities, or just feeling like you can't even change your abilities in the first place, because that would get rid of a lot of the flexibility in the whole limited action set. So, yeah.
And the saving and loading of skill sets, especially, sounds awesome. Hopefully that extends to the ability tiers as well. Looking at this screenshot again, it looks like class 8 abilities and 1 path ability, which are mostly out of combat utility.
Right.
Yeah, it is nice that they gave a little bit of detail about the path abilities that, they might have had it at some point where it was affecting people's decision. People felt like, okay, I need to be a soldier, or I need to be whatever, and they really just didn't like that at all. So they've taken it out. They've made them something. They didn't have a lot of details about it during the live stream, but they said stuff like maybe you'll have an ability that lets you teleport back to town, or bring your group back to town. Or maybe as an explorer, one of the examples that they gave was you'll be doing jumping puzzles as an explorer. So maybe an ability that lets you sort of put your own little waypoint here, at the beginning of the jumping puzzle. You climb to the end, you finish it. You don't want to have to get your way back down. So you use your ability to just pop back to wherever you were. I imagine that would only be usable in the open world, probably not in battlegrounds or arena or whatever else, because then suddenly you've got a very important ability to suddenly just pop back and forth between two places. But at least if it's a path ability in the open world, then you got that, and it makes sense. Lore wise, okay, explorer, they have a way of getting back to wherever they are, or you can sort of just imagine it, fading black, fading back. Okay, I'm back, kind of thing.
One thing I really hope that they add is, so a person who's going to go after the explorers kind of got to like platforming, right? Because that's clearly one of the not really mini games, but part of the gaming experiences they add for that path. Now, if you're in a group, you're allowed to then go do a person's path ability or quest rather with them. So I'm assuming that, because I didn't get to try it, that you'll be platforming and jumping around with them. Mm-hmm. So one thing I hope that they have in there is, inevitably you got somebody who just completely sucks at platforming. I'm fairly good. I suck really bad at FPS, but I'm pretty good at platforming. But I know that there are people in my guild that aren't. So it'd be awesome if there's some ability, like you're just saying, that allows the people that can to platform to get there, and then they can teleport that 1 or 2 people that can't to the end, so they can get whatever. You just
got to duel and have your warrior plasma whip you every single jump.
There you go.
Nice.
The number of abilities, you're actually gonna have access to 11 abilities at once. 1 more from an equipped gadget, which is an interesting piece of gear / ability progression. Do we know anything more about that?
What it sounds like is, to use a easy World of Warcraft comparison, it's like an active trinket that you click it, except it's on your action bar. You always know that whenever you have that kind of item, it's always going to have a clickable ability associated with it. So I think it's neat. It definitely opens up the ability to have them make them a lot more interesting than just suddenly a stat boost. I've got 100 more brutality or whatever. They can actually do something make an explosion that knocks enemies back or something like that, and presumably justifiably have that in there as a everyone has access to the gadget slot. It's not like you're sacrificing pure stat and you feel bad about it that, okay, I can't use the fun ones because I should just use the pure stats that sims better or something. So, yeah, I think it's a neat idea.
What do you guys think about
bring it up?
What do you guys think of this one? This one's a little bit old school. So the final slot's going to be filled with an innate class ability that can't be changed. So for the warrior, it's going to be the stance between DPS and tank spec. So that's a pretty old school methodology, but maybe it's not broken, don't fix it. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, it's kind of it's still pertinent, right? So it's vital, because I remember leveling up, wondering why I was sucking, is because people were looking at me going, you don't have any stances. And I was like, what are you talking about? So, yeah, it just kind of makes sense. For the tank especially, it's helpful. Do I need to be DPS now? Do I need to really be tanky now? Right? I mean, as a DPS stance, I'm never going to be as good as a DPSer like class, but yeah, that kind of stuff is vital. And then I think they even asked the question and answered it in the live stream that are things like that going to be things that you can change in combat? And I want to say that they said that yes. And so that right there is going to be very helpful. Why? Not most MMOs, it's like you have to do it out of combat. Well, you might walk into a situation either with a group or solo that you're like, oh crap, there's like 5 of these guys in here. I need to John Wayne my way out of here. Most of the young people are like, who the hell's John Wayne? But anyway, I got to cowboy up and figure out how I'm going to survive. And if I don't have the ability to put on my tank stance, I'm probably just going to get beat down. So to me, the way I play, that's vital depending on what I'm doing. Because I normally, if I'm just trying to run through things, I'll try to be in a DPS kind of stance so I can not be the last guy in the guild to max level, right? Because tanks tend to level very slowly. So that stuff's just really vital in my opinion.
I do want to be clear though, and this came up in chat, that the button itself that you have as a warrior ability, it's not like your one button is switching stances or something that you lose like that 1 out of 11 buttons or whatever. They actually have like a cooldown associated with which stance they're in. So you can switch stances. There's like a little button that's right above the innate slot button that you can switch between. I think it's like Juggernaut and something else stance, for like Juggernaut being the DPS one. But the innate itself for the warrior is like a very strong cooldown. So I think they were both 2 minutes. The DPS one like reset all of your assault and support ability cooldowns, which actually is like sort of interesting that when we saw the ability tiering like screenshot of all the abilities, they were segregated like assault, support, utility, and was there one other? There was one other, wasn't there? But anyway, so they were split up into different abilities, but that categorization is actually relevant to some other abilities. Like you might have a cooldown that only resets assault abilities or something like that. But anyway, so the DPS one would reset all your cooldowns for assault and support abilities and give you a boost of damage, and then you would also have full kinetic energy and it wouldn't drain, kind of thing. And for the tank stance, the ability, the cooldown was again a 2-minute cooldown that would just make you take no damage for like 8 seconds, which is super important for tanks, right? Just taking no damage on a cooldown. And I sort of wonder what they're going to do for like the Stalker. Like, are they going to have like tank stealth, take no damage kind of thing, or what? How do you compare to take no damage for 8 seconds? That's pretty big, right? I mean, tuning beta's beta, but
Beta. Who knows?
I like taking no damage for 8 seconds. That's epic against the boss.
I know, and it was huge for the warrior too, because the way that shields work. For anyone who doesn't know, shields are like an itemized thing. Like, okay, you have shields, and the little blue part of your health bar is like just completely separate from your health bar, and they come back if you don't take damage for enough seconds, right? That's like it's like when you play like a Call of Duty or whatever FPS game that you don't take damage for enough seconds, it just fills back up, your health is back, kind of thing. So it's like that kind of mechanic, or Halo or whatever from a shield standpoint. But for the warrior, okay, I take no damage for 8 seconds. Their shield goes up because they're not taking any damage, so it's just like it's also a full heal for their shields. I don't know how you compare that.
Questing, pretty much standard stuff. Nothing really major. Percentage bar, kill bigger mob, more progress. Shared quest credits, loot, experience for killing mobs. More is the more you contribute. Pretty much modern day MMO stuff, which everybody's pretty much used to. But, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this. So we've got our first look at WildStar's version of the talent tree. Might look kind of familiar to some Final Fantasy fans. Maybe some Path of Exile fans might notice this. The AMP system. Keep in mind, this is a work in progress. You can see it right there, work in progress. But first impressions, what do you make of this? What do you think?
I was sort of blown away. Like, so when they gave the idea of like, okay, a web, and it's not really like a full web. There aren't obvious connections between things. But again, maybe that's just because the UI isn't final, that we don't see what the connections are between things. Because they did say that there is some sort of relationship between one sextant and another sextant for whatever purpose.
And their UI artists were mortified that this was
Yeah.
getting shown. They're like, please make a disclaimer that it's not finished yet. And I thought it actually looked okay, you know?
Oh, it looks pretty unfinished to me. I mean, it looks pretty unfinished. Just these like, we put an X and we put a line through it and divide it up. It's done. All right, no, it looks pretty. But what do you think for the average player though? Like it looks fairly complex.
Definitely. Complex is one of the many words I would use to describe this thing. It's almost overwhelming when you think about all of the when you think about how you progress through. So if you could scroll down a little bit further so that we have like the center of the screen in the center. So you see how like the hexagon is like different shades of color. That's actually like 3 different tiers of these trees. So like the innermost part, you have points that you can spend in immediately, but you can't go into the next tier of it until you have put enough points in like the first tier. But then you see like that some of the secondary sextants, like the vertical one and the 2 bottom left and bottom right ones, don't have any points in the middle one. So you unlock those by unlocking enough points in the side trees. So in order to put points in the middle trees, you have to put points in the side trees. So it's just sort of like mind-boggling, like, okay, how do I work my way up to whatever ability I want to get to? And what's the best way of doing it? It's just a lot in there.
And then you have to put stuff in the adjacent tree or something like that in order to enable the tree that you actually want to put stuff in. So you have to, like it or not, start building up some secondary capabilities or whatever. I guess, which gets back to that thing when I was talking about, like, you know, you can't just have a straight vertical or, you know, leveling model relative to your stats. You have to get, like, I have to get so much strength or brutality, and then I have to go over here and have this much power, and I'm just completely making up these stats, you know, and then go back up, as opposed to it's just completely linear.
Yeah, and this is one thing that when they ask, okay, how easy is it to respec this thing? I guess I'm getting a little bit ahead of us in the notes. I didn't see that part. But yeah, I already started saying it. Whatever, I'm going forward. They said
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Sorry. But anyway, so they said that, you know, this would be something that they actually would cost money to respec. You'd have to like go back to respec it. It wouldn't be something that's as influx as your ability tiers. So then I immediately wondered, like, okay, but you probably aren't going to have that much overlap in your amp system between your tank and your DPS setup, or your PvP and your other setup. So then, like, do they have dual specs? All those questions from before suddenly came back into this thing, and we don't know exactly how hard it's going to be to respec, what it's going to take, or how they're going to have dual specs, or if they are going to have anything like that. So
yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this UI kind of like comes into itself, because I mean, like, so you're getting 1 point every level from 6 to max. I mean, it's a lot of choices for the player, isn't it? I mean, I know a lot of people, like, I'm watching this show, are probably salivating, going like, that sounds awesome. Yes, I want more choices. But I can imagine a lot of people out there, just like you said, just being like, what am I doing here? I mean, a lot can change with the UI and how they communicate that information to the player and things like that. And I'm sure that's going to get super cleaned up. But I don't know. Could it be too many choices?
I mean,
it might be, I think.
I guess I'm thinking that regardless, because they said that it's still a build in progress or process. Yeah, they're still working on it in terms of they don't know if AMP is going to be the final thing, or at least how they implement it. But the thing that's at least great about it, if nothing else, is it at least demonstrates that these guys are thinking about coming up with new and innovative ways. Because I don't know of any other MMO that's got a system kind of like this to try to give you the option of or the illusion of choice on trying to customize your character. Like, I want to be more burst DPS. I want to be more damage mitigating. I want to have better heals. Whatever. I mean, it's giving you the ability to give, at least as I see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Farhan, it's giving you the ability to try to make sure that you're not a cookie cutter exact copy of this other tank or healer or whatever. It lets you do things slightly differently.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see exactly how much they end up going through with the system, like how it actually feels in practice, how it'll end up being fleshed out, because, you know, this was such an early stage. I mean, things are in such flux. They didn't even have tooltips when they were showing off this stuff. Like, you know, what exactly does each of these buttons do? You know, like, okay, well, this one probably gives a stat because it has the same name as the stat, And then this one doesn't have the same name as the stat, so it's probably an ability kind of thing, or a passive, or other things. And then, that is something. I'm getting a little bit into the next bullet point. I'm being really bad in this one, aren't I? But yeah.
No, go
No
for
soup for
it.
you.
I'm moving out of your way. Just go.
For abilities, you don't. This isn't like a talent tree that much that you have like you're picking up tons of active abilities, right? They said that they put 3 abilities into this amp system, like one in the end of the assault, one at the end of the support, and one at the end of whatever the one on the bottom is. I don't remember the name. Can you scroll down? Save me. Oh no, it's cut off, isn't it? Oh no. So, somebody in chat room. All right. Anyway, someone in the chat room will get it. But so basically, they put an ability at the ends of those tiers because those were abilities that they said that they felt that they were giving to everyone already anyway in a class. Like so, it wasn't open like okay, like a tank or DPS, but they felt like they were too strong if they were given. So rather than nerfing them, they just put them into this thing so that you have to choose. Okay, which one am I going to go for? How is that useful? Because they are abilities that would be useful in any spec. Even in a tank, you might want to have that assault spec ability. Even in a in a DPS one, you might want the support spec ability. Utility, that's the name of the last tier. Thank you. So that would probably be like the CC kind of build or whatever. Now, the other thing to note is that even though a lot of those points are just pure stat, like the first 3 points that they showed in there for assault were just strike through. Like that's the hit stat for rating kind of thing. The last point in that ability was something that was like a proc event, sort of like, okay, if you miss, then something special happens anyway, so it's sort of make up for the fact that you missed, which I don't know how I feel about that much, but I mean, like, the basic idea is that they have these kinds of proc events, so they have all kinds of variety. They have, passive stats, they do have a few abilities, they have proc events, they have events that happen based on your shield, so like, if you have shields, then you have this passive going. If you run out of shields, then this thing happens. So a lot of variety. And what they said that they basically did is they took the procs and abilities and everything that they had in different other systems in the game, like the old gear milestone system and other things, and they moved them over to here. And that's why it's sort of insane right now, because they have all these abilities from all these different places, and so you sort of have to choose now using this amp system. So yes, I am geeking out.
I was moving out of your way, man. I was just letting you go. He's like, I'm psyched. I am going. There's so many possibilities. It's going to be interesting to see how this works.
Yeah.
It's going to be I can't wait to see how this UI kind of fleshes out, because I do think we're going to see a lot of changes with that. So it's going to be interesting. I do, like you said, like the fact that like they're really kind of going outside of the box slightly. It always scares me when talent systems and things like this try to get reworked in a very large fashion. Watch other MMOs really try to do it and come up with these really like interesting ways to, spec your characters and different ways to kind of get away from the tree kind of scenario. And I have to say, I've never really seen it work to the point that it's been really fluid enough, and it causes a lot of confusion sometimes for the player. So TSW, I'm looking at you. But we'll see. I mean, this looks like, I think it's going to be familiar enough. And like I said, how they can sort of, they could easily change the way this UI, this tree kind of like, is in front of the viewer's face to kind of make it feel a little less daunting with all these different paths going all over the place. It's going to be interesting. It looks like there's a lot of choice though.
I almost forgot one of the most interesting things that they mentioned is that some of the amps are actually not unlocked by leveling or by putting points in. They're actually unlocked by getting an item drop, like in the game. So it's like, okay, you found this item, and maybe like an amp will be like rare, like a proc event. So you need to like get it. But the other interesting thing is that they said that it'd be tradable. So then like you've got like, okay, I have to have enough gold so that you can do it, or maybe they'll be craftable or something like that. So they actually have like all these interesting proc events or passes or other things. I hope that it's not like a stat thing. Like it's not just like 5 strike through or whatever. It's got to be something interesting, right? That they have some of it. And the example they gave was one that when like a warrior gets to full kinetic energy, they start radiating off power kind of thing. So they sound cool. That okay, there's stuff that's unlocked through items instead of
that
just.
Could actually
but
be
then you
really
still have to
interesting.
Yeah, so they're doing a lot of cool stuff with this system. I just want to get my hands on it.
I want to see Farhan's notes. He's just like making notes right now.
I want to see the app.
Look, there he is. See?
The Farhan app.
The Farhan app coming.
The FAP.
Uh-oh, don't say that.
I mean, it seems like it'd be interesting to actually, like, one of the ideas I had for a mod would be like, okay, like, I want to get to this point. I want this ability, and so you sort of do it, and then maybe it, like, suggests, like, a path, like, okay, you put enough points in this tree, put enough points in this tree, and then you'll get to that one. So that you can sort of have, like, a more straightforward goal, which is something that I think that they might want to put in themselves. Some sort of way to make it a little bit more straightforward that, okay, I want this specific thing, and then you sort of, like, get a progression through it. But
you might have just given away your whole idea for an awesome mod. There you go. Farhan's FAP.
Anyone who puts it out, as long as it's out there, I'll use it.
All right, I want to talk about these hoverboards, but first I want to tell you guys about a great deal we got going on with Audible. Love the Audible. I've been a subscriber for many years. I want to hook you guys up with a free 30-day trial and a free audio book. All you got to do is go to audible.com/gamebreaker. Download the app to your iPhone or your Android device, whatever you got. It's audiobooks on tape. On digital. Can't even say on tape, it's told. It's audiobooks on tape. It's not on tape. It's actually digital. Do you guys see Aragon? The movie was okay, but the book is fantastic. Listen to this guy's voice.
Library presents Aragon, Inheritance, Book 1, by Christopher Paolini. Read for you by Gerard Doyle. Prologue.
Setting it up with the music.
Shade of fear. Wind howled through the night, carrying a scent that would change the world. A tall shade lifted his head and sniffed the air. He looked human, except for his crimson hair and maroon eyes. He blinked in surprise. The message had been correct. They were here. Or was it a trap? He weighed the odds, then said icily, "Spread out. Hide behind trees and bushes. Stop whoever is coming, or die." Around him shuffled 12 Urgles with short swords and round iron shields painted with black symbols. They resembled men, with bowed legs and thick brutish arms made for crushing. I
don't even want to stop it. I want to know what happens. All right, check it out. Aragon, book 1 in the series. It could be also free. All you got to do is make sure you use the URL audible.com/gamebreaker. Go over, sign up, make an account. Download Aragon tonight. Start listening to it on your iPhone or your Android device. And if you like the service, which I'm sure you were going to, you sign up for like a monthly. And then how many books you kind of listen to. You sign up for different tiers of how much you want to spend there, and you get credits back for books. Like I'm on like the two book a month club is what I am in on. So check it out. Love having Audible on as a sponsor. And you can support Gamebreaker by supporting our sponsors. So support us and go over to audible.com/gamebreaker.
I've got to say, though, that it's actually so neat. One of the things that you can do with these audiobooks is that, it sounds a little bit lame at first, the idea of, okay, I'm just going to listen to the book, but they put so much work into the voices and like this with the music. It actually makes it such a different experience that you actually feel like you I at least feel like I really get into the book a lot more. Like I was saying with the Ender's Game Audible thing, at least I didn't listen to the Audible version, but back in the day, like I listened to the like an actual book on tape, right? Back in the day from the library.
The old school.
Yeah, but the thing is that was cool is that Ender's Game, spoilers. There's a sort of a twist ending, right, kind of thing.
Don't spoil it.
There is something, right? But you know that it's coming if you're reading the book because you're like, I got this many pages. What's happening, kind of thing, right? And with the audiobook, they've got interviews and stuff, so you don't realize that you're like listening. You're like, okay, I got a few more hours. Wait, what happened? Wait, what? And kind of thing, and it just sort of gets into it.
Creeps up on you.
They can do that kind of thing with audiobooks that they sort of keep the suspense in there a little bit. They can put some stuff on the end. They can have, and they got these extras that are actually pretty cool if you get into the universe, if you get into a lot of these books that are in series. They're actually pretty neat. So
yeah, and I love the fantasy books like these when they actually go the extra mile, and like you said, like the narrators really get into character and kind of add the music and all that kind of stuff. I think it just adds it because I listen to a lot of them like at night, like going to sleep or something. Throw the headphones on, just kind of lay in bed and it's dark. And you could kind of just focus in and hone in on it. And it kind of actually really does take you to another place, even though you're not watching a movie. It's like it's in my mind. I'm using my imagination. It's amazing. All right, hoverboards. What do you want to talk about more about Audible? We can just keep talking about Audible. Well, sure. Go for
I
it.
was just gonna keep talking about Audible.
Go for it, dude.
I like the special effects sounds in it. That's what really does it for me. Especially listening to like a lot of Star Wars.
The Star Wars books are great.
Type stuff. Yeah,
They're
mean,
great.
So
stop reading, kids. Start listening.
Or get ahead on Game of Thrones.
There you go.
Do whatever you want.
So hoverboards. Well, what do we know? I mean, there's some secret codes. You guys into the ARG stuff?
I'm not quite into it enough to actually solve them, but I love it when people do it for me, and then I feel accomplished. So
don't feed the disclaimer.
So,
do you guys remember who Disclaimer Guy is? Is it Chris Hannell? Is that Disclaimer Guy?
Not sure. I don't know.
I think it is. So this it makes sense in a little bit, right?
So what the heck are we talking about here? So there's some secret codes and there's some ARG crap in the disclaimer for the Warrior video. The community dissected it and discovered a video we can't play because of YouTube, of course. Can't do it.
Now, why is it you can't play it? Is because YouTube thinks you're trying to copyright infringe somebody?
Yeah, you get copyright strikes against your account. And they're like, bad, you can't play that. Some other company owns that. And then your account gets shut down and then you cry and you weep and you go home. We can't do shows anymore. So it's just easier if we stay away from all of them. You know, depends who it is, but you can't take the chance. Like some companies are cool and some companies are not cool. So we don't take the chance anymore. But I can confirm we saw hoverboards.
And the reveal video is actually hilarious. I love Carbine's sense of humor. It's
How do you guys feel about hoverboards?
I think it's awesome, especially if they're going to make sure that they scale to the body type and size of the different races. But it's that whole what Marty McFly kind of dream. And even when they were doing the live stream, they were showing hold on, wait. Okay, like look, we're over water. You know, trying to show the whole Back to the Future kind of thing. I mean, we've already got people in our guild saying that they're going to name their tune Biff, and they're going to have like little groups of people that are going to like all fly around each other and stuff like that. So I think it's just one of the many types of fantasies that people have wanted to live or fulfill in some kind of MMO, some kind of game, and this just gives the reason or excuse to do it. And I mean, it's really kind of, well, this is my take on it. It's really kind of simple when you think about it. I'm sure that the developer's going, say what right now? but the fact that it's this small little thing, in relative to like some kind of vehicle or some kind of other mount, and then the way that you're moving along, it gives you the perception of speed, even though you might be traveling at the same speed as a vehicle might be. And then the fact that you can just little jump off of stuff and do little flips. It's something that, in the grand scheme of things of the MMO, has no bearing. It doesn't really matter. But the fact of it, it's just a fun little thing to do. I guarantee you, day one, that you see all the people that reach whatever level they need them, they're going to be doing like little Tony Hawk kind of competitions and stuff like that. And it just becomes its own little mini game, right?
Yeah, and the idea and being in WildStar, kind of a sci-fi theme that fits perfectly. So it's like I think it's going to fit. It's not going to be cheesy.
To put the theory crafting hat on a little bit, a
a
lot of people were commenting that they showed it off a little bit in the live stream at the end, like as a reward for finding the disclaimer or the disclaimer video reveal or ARG thing. They showed it off in the live stream, and it felt a little bit slower in the live stream part than it actually did in the reveal video, because it looks like it's zooming across the landscape in the ARG, and they have this huge air time. With in the double jump, it's like him grabbing the board and doing like a little trick. So, what I'm wondering, they've talked about mount customization and having little things like what. So the one from the reveal, that's probably customized for speed. You got some other things. You got maybe sort of physics engine built into it that you've because they
I think you'll be able to customize your mounts. Customize your mounts.
Yeah. So maybe that's the reason why the live stream
put some balls on it.
Vanilla.
Strap it.
Yeah, that one's the vanilla hoverboard. You gotta hot rod customize it to get it to make the big jumps. So do it, Carbine.
Sweet jumps.
It's gonna be interesting though if they can get destroyed or if you can get knocked off of them. For the whole sake of just crafting in general, which I don't know, is if you have item decay. So imagine if you're you're driving through or surfing through some area that's dangerous, you get knocked off or it gets blown up, will you have to replace it, or do you just get back on your mount?
Yeah,
and I guess
mean, that's a good question. The one thing that this is a little bit off because it's not hoverboards, but when they talked about flying mounts back in the day, one of the ways they thought about balancing it rather than it being you're just flying all the time is you got fuel. And so you've actually got like a limit to how much you can actually like use your flying part of your flying mount. So maybe they do actually have something in there that you have some sort of consumable thing, which I know that sounds sort of lame for someone who's just playing and they don't want to be burdened by something that's getting consumed.
That's some serious RP right there.
But from a crafter standpoint, NRP, yeah.
It's like, totally required if you're going to make crafting relevant, right?
Yeah, you have to have consumable. So do it. Like, why not? Just
like remember,
make them awesome.
All right, Gary, I'm going back to SWG.
Oh,
remember,
wait. I don't have water, but I'm drinking.
Okay. Okay, so remember back in the day, you'd go to Dathomir, whether you were going to just grind resources or you were trying to go to the village for Jedi, whatever. There would be Rancor all over the place. And what was the thing that would be doing when you're going from the starport to the village? You'd be getting bitch slapped off your damn little speeder all the time. You'd lose at least 1 or 2 speeders per trip. So you'd have to have a case of speeders just to get back and forth. And as mundane as that sounded or sounds, it had complete relevance and a requirement that you had crafters out there that were making them so that you could get from A to B. Because if you were going to try to pedal your ass from the starport to the village, you weren't going to make it. It just is the way it was. And so those little things that make crafting relevant, like item decay, and make it so that only a crafter can repair it or something, it just makes crafting relevant. And crafting has just got to be relevant in MMOs again. A lot of MMOs that have come out, the crafter is an afterthought. It's a trinket, So I love it when crafters have relevance and purpose. And I'll be the first to tell you, I am not a crafter, but I like the fact that there is stuff in there for the people who like that because it keeps them busy, it keeps them tinkering, it keeps them crafting me the cool stuff I need so I can raid.
That's really what it is. You just want to make sure that you can get cool stuff. You're just like,
there you go.
I'm not going to do it, but I know you're going to do it. I feel the same way. Small percentage of people who do it, but I know that they love doing it. So, for anybody who's not into the hoverboard thing, just side note, Gaffney also confirmed on Reddit that these were not the only types of mounts, obviously, in the game. So, if you hate hoverboards, other things will come. Farhan Siddiqui, follow him on Twitter at Unindel, UNINDEL, and of course, right here on the Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppet every Tuesday. Mondays. I'm all screwed up. Is there a show that I cannot screw up the day or the time or like something? My brain is just a sea of nonsense. Mark Taylor, follow him at Guild Umbra on the Twitter and right here on the Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppet as well. Always a pleasure, gentlemen. You can follow me at Gary Gannon, follow Gamebreaker TV, Gamebreaker TV. We do show on Mondays at what time?
3 p.m. Pacific.
There you go.
Yep.
Come on over for the live show. It's always a good time. And make sure to go over to WildStar.tv. That is our WildStar website to keep up on all your WildStar news every day. Keep it locked into WildStar.tv. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next week for some more UDSP.